Hi, Ray here. I'm glad you could join me up here on the balcony. In my last video, which was also shot here on the balcony, I gave you a little bit of a teaser about what my next video would be, because actually I started it on that day, but then I was rudely interrupted right after I did that little video on the teaser for the Z9, got interrupted by a series of storms, which is we've been weathering those ever since. So today, finally, I'm back here, and we have changeable light, which we'll have to deal with, and I'm going to discuss neutral density filters. That is, I'm going to compare single neutral density filters with variable neutral density filters. So starting off, whether you're using a variable neutral density or single, in this case I'm going to be talking about 100 millimeter by 100 millimeter filters, you're going to be running into stepping rings. And so here on this 70 to 200 2.8 Z mount lens, it has a 77 millimeter thread. We've got the 77 millimeter stepping ring in there, and we have a whole bunch more here for different, obviously different lens sizes. So if I was using the 100 by 100 NiSi filters, and that's what we're using. I bought this NiSi, I think this was the advanced kit, a couple of years back, and I've added to it since then with a couple of other ND filters. So the first thing that we do is we put this adapter on here, which is an 82 millimeter thread. So we'll thread that onto the adapter ring. There we have that. Then we have the filter holder, which snaps into place like that, and we tighten it up, and then we can add our filter there. So we'll figure out what we need. Actually, on this lens here, I'm using a 3-stop ND filter, but that lens is, the widest aperture is f4. So this, I'm guessing, will need a 4-stop. And we can swing this around now. What I should have said is, without that filter, I would be shooting at f16 at 1/50th of a second. And why don't I jump in here? Why would we actually be wanting to use a neutral density filter? Well, when it comes to video, we want to maintain the so-called 180-degree rule, so that if I'm shooting as I am at 24 frames a second, we're going to need, well, what this camera can give us is 1/50th, which is close enough. So we want to maintain that 1/50th of a second. So 1/50th of a second at our chosen f-stop, and particularly if we want to maintain also a wider aperture, the only other option is to use an ND filter. And I should also say that when it comes to using the Ninja 5 with this Nikon Z6, and I'm shooting in N-Log, then my base ISO is 800. So there's even more need for an ND filter there, because I can't lower my ISO any lower than 800, which is a bit of a pain. But the only other option then is to get this camera converted so that it'll shoot ProRes RAW, which then we get our 100 ISO back. Okay, a little bit of a tangent there. And also, when it comes to ND filters, they have different designations, and it can be a little bit confusing because depending who's talking about them, they might use these different designations. So for the purpose of this video, I'm not going to shoot through I'm not going to record with the Ninja 5. So we'll just unplug that for now, and what you're going to see here is through the camera. So we're back at our 100, and so obviously f16 is not going to be good, so 2.8, and actually that looks a little underexposed. Then our other option is to bump up the ISO. So let's go from that 100 ISO. Looks like, yeah, 1/25th will do that. So I've discovered that these NiSi filters, through using them now for over 2 years, that they're very, very good filters. In particular, there seems to be no appreciable color cast. And they're pretty standard through the different strengths. So I've been very happy with these. But as I mentioned in a recent video, when it comes to real run and gun, this setup can be a bit of a hassle. And so I've been tempted and finally invested in a variable neutral density filter. And because I'd been using the NiSi filters and was very happy with them, I invested in this NiSi variable, or I think they call it ND. And this particular one ranges from, I think it's 1.5 stops to 5 stops. So quite often I find myself needing a 6-stop with these ones, but these things are not cheap. I think this was like $220 Canadian. So I figured, you know, for most cases, 5 stops is gonna do me, except for on the brightest days. So anyway, I bought this one, and so let's do a little comparison. So we'll take this one off. Not a big deal. Take that off. And we need to take this off. Let's see if we can get, yeah, that came off without taking the stepping ring with it. So this stepping ring goes to 82 millimeters, which is for the adapter, the same size as the adapter for the NiSi. So this will thread right in here because I bought the 82 millimeter. And there's a tip for you. You know, buy the largest one that you think you'll need to standardize things. So I can always step down the 82, but it's hard to step up, if that makes sense. So let's do a little comparison here. So the ND filter doesn't come by stops. It's just got minimum, maximum, and some little marks in between. So I can only eyeball this, really. And what I'm doing is I'm going on the histogram in the camera, and that looks about right to me. So we'll do a little comparison. I'll put these up side by side so that you can see. Now the first thing that I've noticed, because this is not the first time that I've used it, I've had it for about a week, is there's quite a blue cast, it seems to me, on this very ND compared to the other NiSi filters. That's a little disappointing because I was hoping to match them easily if I'm using, say, the 100 by 100 single filter on one camera and the very ND on another camera. I was hoping that I wasn't going to have to mess around too much in post in order to match them. That's not going to be the case. But let's look at the optical quality. That's probably more important. I also have this fader ND filter from Amaran. Again, this is a 77 millimeter, and this was the first variable ND filter that I bought many moons ago. And I think this cost me somewhere around, now I can't remember whether it was $35 or $45, but it's pretty cheap. It's noisy, unlike the NiSi filter, which is totally solid. And I already know from many years of using it and cursing that it suffers from the dreaded X factor. And that's caused by, because variable ND filters are essentially a couple of polarizers, that you can run into this problem where you have this big X shadow in the middle of it. And I've run into it, as I said, on a number of occasions. And so I actually haven't used this in years, but we'll give it a go right now to give a comparison, not only for its IQ, but also for the color. So it'll be interesting to compare it, especially to that NiSi filter, which, as I said, definitely has a blue cast. When it comes to ND filters, of course, there's also single round ND filters, threaded filters. And I've had threaded ND filters for many years. And I have this one here. This happens to be a 6-stop. I don't know what happened to my 4-stop, but this is a B+W, nice German filter. And so we'll do a little comparison with this one And this is a 77 millimeter, so it'll thread right into this 70 to 200. So I bumped this one up to 400. I think 400, between 320 and 400. We'll see what 320 looks like. Speaking of variable, we've got our variable light, which is, well, just think about that. Here's one of the advantages of a variable filter, is that you don't have to switch your filter, you just dial it down a bit when the light comes up. So there's another advantage. But obviously a variable ND can cover what, half a dozen or more of these single filters do. And these single filters, one of these filters is going to run you somewhere around $200 US, maybe a little less, but around $200 anyway. So by the time you've got a half a dozen of these, well, you're into the big bucks. So depending on what you choose, and I'm not saying that the NiSi filters are the end-all and be-all, but I've been very happy with these. We'll see, because I actually haven't taken anything that I've shot with this variable ND filter, knowing that it has a blue cast, and struggled with it in post. So I'll get back to you on that one. On the other hand, I guess I should have a pretty good idea by the time I've got this video edited. But what do you think between these different ND filters that I've just shown? Or do you have a preference for ND filters? Let me know in the comments below. And if you found this video helpful, please do give it the old thumbs up. And if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, well, you know what to do there, and hit that notification bell to be apprised of my upcoming content. In the meantime, take care of yourselves, cheers, and we'll see you later.